Greetings, I'm Greg Moss, and in this video I'm going to show you guys exactly how you administer security in Odoo. Now it's a little bit confusing for people sometimes, and I'm really hoping to make this video, by the end you're going to rock solid understand exactly how you manage security in Odoo. And if you like this video, please click the like button down below and click the subscribe as well as the little notification icon too, so you get notified when I release new videos. Then that really helps me as well. So we're going to begin here. I got Odoo Enterprise installed. It happens to be Odoo Enterprise 14. Now what I'm going to show you in this video, it's going to really work with any version of Odoo, and whether it's Odoo Community or Enterprise, because the Odoo's fundamental security mechanisms have not changed for many years. There might be a little bit difference in permissions or some default settings and some little things here and there, but as far as the core understanding of Odoo permissions, this video is going to really give it to you. I've taught this literally hundreds of times, and so hopefully I'm going to be able to jump right in and show you where people kind of get stuck and hung up. I'm going to make it pretty fast. I have more in-depth videos on OdooInnerCircle.com, OdooClass.com. You can find my Odoo Essentials course, where I have an Odoo administration course that goes through everything you'd really need to go in a lot of detail. Now in this one, what we're going to do is I have already installed the sales app because I wanted some, actual application records that we could look at. And we're going to begin by going over into settings to take a look at this. And you'll notice here at the top I already have technical showing, but if you don't have that showing, you're going to want to come and activate the developer mode down here. Now that's like my number one tip. Without developer mode activated, you're really not going to get very far trying to administer Odoo. So make sure to activate the developer mode. So you're going to do that first. And then you can come up here and look, and we have users and groups. So we'll just quickly go into users. So users is obviously the basic fundamental users in the system. I think everybody kind of understands that, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. If we go into the administer user here, like we are, we can see that we have a user type that's getting defined, and we're really going to be focusing on internal users for the purposes of this video and understanding the architecture. And we got here under sales a group that's assigned, and obviously this the administrator, and they're assigned administrator. And then the administration, they have a setting here that's set and accounting. So these are groups that are getting assigned to that user. So this is the administrator. Probably not our best example, so let's go ahead and create another user real quick. Bob Sacramento. And we're going to give Bob an email address at odooclass.com. And so now here we can look at, we can set for Bob under the sales application whether or not they have access to all documents or only their own document or an administrator. So what we're going to do for Bob is set it here to only Bob is only their own documents, and we're going to make Bob a billing person, but they can't be a billing administrator. And actually what I'm just going to do is turn that off. We're not going to worry about this right now. We don't want any confusion. We just want to see what would happen and what the access rights really look behind this particular group. So we're going to save that. So now what this means is in the sales application, Bob can only look at his own documents. He can't look at anyone else's documents. Now let's make one more user. And we're going to call this person Kendra Sims, and put Kim at OdooInnerCircle.com. And for this Kim, we're going to put her as, Kim could be a him too, as all documents. So Bob, only his, Kim will say her is only hers, all documents. And we'll save. And we can go ahead and leave her a billing administrator. This doesn't really matter. We're going to focus on these groups. And the reason we're focusing on these is there's a hierarchy here. We have administrator, who gets the most permissions, all documents, who has less than the administrator, but still more than the own documents only. So this person has the least permissions or are the most restrictive. This person has the least restrictions or the most permissions. And so we're going to save that. Now, that brings us to looking at where these are actually defined. I chose groups here, and I come down to the very bottom, and we can see all documents and own documents only. Just for reference, the administrator one is here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the own documents only. And you'll see that we have all 3 users in here. Now, for some people, this is already confusing. I've taught this training many times, and back in Odoo 7 it was confusing, back in Odoo 10 it was confusing, back in Odoo 12 it was confusing, it's confusing Odoo 14. And that for some people, because at first it's kind of confusing, because it says up here user own documents only, but yet, you know, we have Kendra and Bob in here and the administrator are all in here, and yet this says own documents only. So if this trips you up, you're definitely in the right video. If you go, Greg, you know, you're telling me what I already know, maybe this whole video is maybe a little too basic for you, but maybe I'm still going to show a good way that maybe you could show it to other people. So this is what this means, though, is Odoo assigns these permissions down through an inheritance so that the people that are higher up in the groups that they have permission get more permission than the lower ones, so that, and they'll always have the permission that the lowest group has. So let's look at it as we walk through it. It's going to make a lot more sense. So this user own documents only, if we go look under inherited, they are inheriting from the internal user group. So you can see this is where Odoo goes from using the Odoo framework as just an internal user, and that sales is coming along and saying, I'm going to define a user, own documents only, with a very the most limited set of permissions I want a user for that app to have. So this is what we're learning. We're learning that the group that you set up that inherits from internal user is always going to be the group that you want to have the least permissions in the application. Therefore, we can come here to our groups, come down to here, and look at all documents, and we'll see that all documents inherits from own documents only. So every permission, every write, every view, all these record rules that we'll look at in a little bit, those are all going to be inherited from own documents only. So anything you put in own documents only, this very most restrictive group, anything you put in there is going to be inherited by the people in the all documents group. And we look under users here, pause the video, pause it, and tell me, who do you think are the users in all documents? Well, you'll see Bob dropped out because Bob is in his own document group, and he is inheriting from an internal user, getting the least restrictive permissions of own documents. This one is inheriting from own documents, and Kendra is in this group, as you can see. Now let's go and back out to groups, and this should be pretty obvious now. If we go to sales and administrator, we can see that the sales administrator group inherits from all documents. And with that, we can look over here and see that Kendra's not in this group. You know, if you don't understand it the first time, maybe rewind the video back, watch it again, and then look at maybe some of the other groups that we saw, like with the billing and the billing administrator, and play with some of them to see how this inheritance works, because you need to understand it. The least inherited or the least permission user of any app is going to inherit from the internal user, and that they're going to have all of the permissions that every other user in every other group is going to have in that app. The least restricted group will have that. And then the next restrictive group is going to have what it needs, plus everyone who has inherits from that, and so on and so on. And you can just go as deep as you need. And that explains the inheritance as comprehensively as I can with examples. If you're confused, go back to the own documents only. Recognize that all people have access to that, and that it is the least permissions for this sales app, because it inherits from internal user. Don't worry about what's above internal user yet. That's a little bit more of an advanced video. We want to understand these basics. So now with that said, what is happening here is whenever you put this group in, this is telling you what users are affected in this group and what the inheritance is. But the next question is, what do you get from that? So if we go to own documents only, remember this has the most restrictions and the least things you can do. But if we go to menus, you're going to see all these menus, because even though it's own documents only, you still need to get to your quotations, you need to get to your orders, you need to get to your invoices, customers, and products. So these all come with the most restrictive group for sales. If we come to views, we're going to have views here that are for the same way, defining which ones you have rights to. And then finally, access rights. And so access rights is where we're going to spend a little bit of time in this video. And this is where the data is collected. So the data, for all of your applications Odoo are stored in models. And this is where it's going to say, for own documents only, exactly what you have read access to, what you have write access to, create access to, and so on. And remember, this is the most restrictive group. So like res partner sale.user, which is our contacts, this own documents only cannot write, create, or delete it. They can just get a list of these people. And notice, like with the accounts and the journals and the salespeople, there's a lot of things. The product sales and where they're used, they can't do those things. They don't have write and create access. Now look, sale.order, you have create, write, and read access, and that's important because you need that to add your orders, and so that this person, whoever the user is, can actually create and edit their orders. Because if you didn't have this, you wouldn't even be able to create orders at all. So everything in the access rights is you don't have access if it is not in there. And that's an important thing. You don't have access to these views if they are not in here, and you don't have access to these menus if they are not in there. In other words, this is an additive process. You're saying, when I put in these users, they're going to get all these access rights, and it's definitively saying what they are, plus anything that they've inherited from. So there's a whole bunch of menus here. Like we already know that the discuss and some of the other things might be lumped in here as well. Then that gets us to our final part of this video, where we're going to keep it kind of short and get through these things so that we can all understand them. And then in the comments below, you can ask your questions of what you might not understand, or even better, you can go to odooclass.com or odooinnercircle.com and check out my Odoo Essentials course, where I have a whole administration course that really goes into detail on some of these things, as well as some live one-on-one consulting that you can get from me to help set these things up yourself if you do need one-on-one help. So the record rules is kind of the final piece of this, in that all of these are giving you access to the entire sets of data. So when you get access to the sale.order, that means you get access to all the records in it. And you're saying you're explicitly giving access rights to this group and all the users in it, these rights. And that means any of the orders altogether. So you might ask yourself, well, how does this own documents only work? Well, the own documents only work real specifically by using record rules, because the only way Odoo can know that one record or one document is yours versus one belongs to someone else is by looking at the records. And so record rules are the opposite, in a sense, of access rights, views, and menus, in that record rules limit the data. So any record rules you make are taken from the full set of data and then starting to restrict them based upon the rule. So now we're going to look at it. So the record rules are the most important thing, are these two pieces right here to define them. Is we have our sales order line, and then the domain that makes up the record rule. Now domain is basically another way of saying condition or filter, and it's a certain syntax that you have to know, And of course, like everything else in computers, this has to be all correct. Now, how you build these and how you create them, a little bit outside the scope of this video. I have a Mastering Odoo Development course that goes really into detail of how to build out domains and things. But to be honest, in a pinch and you're really working to try to learn these things, examine the rules that are already there. Install a bunch more applications, and then you'd have more rules to look at to come up and build your own rules should you need to make rules. In this point, we're really trying to understand them. So let's look at the sale order one down here. What this is saying is in the sales order model, which holds all of our sales orders, we're saying that the user ID must equal, and this is a field, so this is looking at the field because it's in quotes inside a sales order. It must equal the user ID right here. And you notice there's no quotes around this because this is actually getting the person that is logged in. So when you go to look at your own documents, it's only going to show if the user ID equals you, or, and that's what this little thing is in front, the user ID happens to be false. Like it doesn't know who the user is. It's going to show it anyway. And that's how record rules work. And then these are applied across the models if, obviously you have to have access rights to them. So if you don't have access rights to sales order, this record rule is going to be operating, it's just not going to do anything because you don't even have access rights to the model. Because remember, you first get access rights to the model. Now you have everything inside of there, like sale order. It's down here. So there's the model. You're going to have access rights to everything in sale order, but when you put the record rule on, it's then going to say every time it goes to show records, apply this rule or on, and then you can specifically say when you're reading, writing, creating, and deleting. So that could be useful for some things in which you might want to have a record rule that you might be able to read certain records, like maybe you want to be able to read other documents from users, or maybe you want other people to be able to not. So you could have, like we have now, own documents only, but you could make another rule that says, well, but for when it's, reading, then the rule would be different, and you could have, a different set of users, or only apply this under write. So take this off of the read, and then if you literally unclick this here, and we take this off the read, that means anybody could read them, but you could only write if you were the user, but any user could read them. So you might be, say, own documents only, edit, read only all. And that would redefine this rule to say I want it the opposite of that. I want it this way. So we don't, we do want it this way. Yeah, we don't want to apply this rule on the read. So when we don't apply this rule on the read, it's going to skip over it, and they'll get to see the record, right? And so that's how this works. That's how the users, the inheritance of them, which menus you get to see, which views you get to see, access rights you get to see, as well as the record rules based in this group. So hopefully those are making sense. Now, I am going to show you the menus just so we can understand the inheritance hopefully a little bit more. So we have our own documents only. And if I go to an inherited, remember it's going the wrong way almost. Like we want to see what inherits from this to see what menus we get. Now, I already know there's no menus defined for all documents. Empty. But remember, it's inheriting all those menus that were in the one we just looked at. And notice how it changed the name here for us, so that's good. But now if we go to Sales Administrator, we're going to see that these are the menus that only the administrator needs. The configuration menu, the reporting menu, and then to configure the sales and the teams, that menu. And there's no different views, all the same. And you'll notice, though, these access rights are a lot different. Like lots of rights, create access, delete access. You only see these delete accesses and access rights in the administrator. So take some time to look through it. Add additional apps and then go through the apps and look at what they're setting these to. If you're ever trying to configure Odoo, make sure you're looking at how Odoo is representing the data that's already there, and understanding why you're getting the results you are. And hopefully, particularly with this inherited thing, this video has been helpful for people that are maybe just a little bit confused about the basics. So hopefully this video is helpful. If you liked it, make sure you click like, subscribe, and don't hesitate to check out OdooInnerCircle.com, OdooClass.com. I've got lots of materials on there, and I can't wait to see your comments, and then hopefully see you in the next video. Thanks.